How can we leverage digital media in schools? We can stop being driven by fear. We can start to understand that this is the world the kids live in, and that our schools can reflect that. John Dewey said it best. He said, if we teach today's students the way we taught them yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. And we are doing that all over this country.
Literacy has always been defined by the technology, right? Before the printing press, your ability to orally recite something meant to be literate. And so as technology has made things cheaper, we're now saying, well, is someone literate if they cannot critique media, take media in, if they're only taking in traditional text? That's a question to answer today, but what would that mean in 2020? I would venture to say that they won't necessarily be considered as being literate.
We find when we talk about 21st century skills, people often reduce them to skills for the workplace and skills involving technology. And we really are thinking about skills for creativity, for civic engagement, for social life, the full range of experiences that young people will be involved in the future.
If you look around you, young people everywhere, at home, in malls, and in schoolyards, are texting, tweeting, and gaming. They're joining virtual interest groups, making and uploading videos to YouTube, and defining who they are to their friends through their Facebook pages. While many parents are anxious about the time their children spend on cell phones, on social networks, and playing online games, a growing number of researchers and educators are excited about the opportunities these digital media platforms bring to learning. A cell phone can be a distraction in the classroom, or it can be an instant connection to the vast resources of the internet. A digital life may have more virtual relationships than in-person ones, but it improves the opportunities to interact with experts and form groups to support the interests that young people care most about. To produce the new learners of the 21st century, educators and others will have to find the right balance between the perils of being always on and the necessity for young people to creatively use the gadgets and digital media tools of everyday life. For the next hour, we explore 5 stories that show how educators, inside and out of the classroom, are inviting young people to use the digital media tools they value most to direct their own learning and take a more active role in shaping their experience of the world.
We like games that are challenging. As game designers, we have to really understand the player is the most important part of your game. The player is the one that tells you whether your game is good or not. Now, you're designing your games for a very critical audience, which is your peers.
My name is Jaden.
My name is Case.
Nadine.
Nicholas Rodaliari, if you want my full name. And I go to Quest to Learn.
Quest to Learn is a school for digital kids.
Like a lot of people must say, it's a slogan, the school of the future.
It's mainly what we do here. We learn, we read, but we also do a lot of digital things.
We use a lot more technology at this school. We do a lot of hands-on projects. We don't sit in front of textbooks.
We learn through gaming and playing games.
The teacher also does talk, tell us things. It's like we just watch a computer all day like this. It's not like that completely. It's not all like that.
It's a system-based thinking, trial and error, lots of stuff that's really fun and unlike other schools.
We have the basic classes of a school, but we give them different names. Like math is called Code Worlds, science is the way things work, social studies is BSP for being space and place, and sports for the mind, it's more like designing things for that class.
Rocco, you want to guide me through your game?
Okay. Yeah.
I want to see your diagram first.
I took out a couple of things because it would have been too cluttered. Okay, so first you're presented with 3 choices.
Okay.
2 of which are wrong. So one actually leads to a goal.
Okay.
I used to think that when I was a little kid that if you put 2 video games together in one system, they would combine the games. So I always thought it'd be really fun to make a game.
Game design is not just like we click on a button and we have a full game. Game design is all about trial and error and figuring out all these things that would make a good game.
The more choices you have in a game, what happens?
you play it more times.
You play it more times, exactly. And it is what?
Because if you only have one choice, you're only going to play it once, and then you're going to say, oh, I don't want to do it again.
Exactly.
Generally, when we work with kids around making games, it's not just you sort of set them loose in a game-making program. There tends to be a very structured way in which you pose a set of guiding questions, like, are you engaging the player? Are you giving the player feedback? Do they know where to go now? And all of those are big systems concepts. They design something part way, and then you stop them, and you do a kind of assessment, which may involve them drawing diagrams.
Oh, so basically this is the end, the goal. Okay, so we have two different endings. Do we have any dead ends in here?
I have not put them.
Okay, so this is like a next step for you to work, to put a couple of dead ends in there.
I think the construct that has been most overlooked now in the 21st century, and maybe in the 20th century as well, is the power and importance of play. Very often when you're tinkering, it doesn't make pure logic sense. It's something you begin to feel in your hands as much as your mind. Tinkering brings thought and action together in some very powerful, magical ways. Where you say, oh! And things just suddenly gel. They just come together. And it's like an epiphany. Well, that epiphany that happens through playing and then seeing something just come together never leaves you. That is a lifelong learning event.
Right now we're working with Little Big Planet, the PS3 game.
And we're designing stuff for Fables, Aesop's Fables.
And we have to create a level by using their create level template.
Which is really cool, so we get to make characters and sets and stuff.
There are point to that.
Good to work on a kind of translation project. So they're studying a story, and they're looking at what does it take to translate the components of the story into a live 3D game environment. So it's a little bit like a virtual theater performance of a story that has come from a kind of oral tradition of storytelling, moved to a printed page, moved to a kind of graphic novel format, now into a 3D game environment.
Doing game design in school teaches you to attack a complex problem into smaller pieces. It also makes you think on many different levels at once. By designing games, you see things in a new way.
Oh, that's kind of nice with the change in background at the end.
Our old model of schooling, let's just teach you what you're going to know for the rest of your life, clearly isn't going to work. And it clearly isn't going to work to have a population who can't actually solve problems with their knowledge. So how do we get people prepared to learn in the future for things that don't even exist now, and how do we prepare them to be able to innovate and solve problems and not just know a bunch of facts they can't use? And Quest to Learn is one paradigm of how to do that, and a very thoughtful one because it's based on an analogy to games, to how people learn in games. Now, why should it be based on an analogy? A game is nothing but a problem space. What is a video game? It's just a set of problems. It could be anything. Civilization is problems in history. Halo's problems in a fantasy world of fighting. Harvest Moon is problems in farming. Chibi Robot is problems on how a 4-inch robot could clean a house. It doesn't matter what the problems are. All a video game is a set of problems that you must solve in order to win.
We have a wireless building, the kids use laptops, and the reason we do that is so that we can put them away when it's actually not the best tool for them to be learning with. But all of the classes use all different kinds of digital media. We've had kids make digital comics as part of their curriculum. They've been working in a unit on ancient civilizations, a series of whole collectible cards that were in PDF form that they did research on and created the cards and then printed them out and had sort of collectible decks like Pokemon. Kids produce video podcasts, they use flip cams. But for us, digital is just a choice of one tool among other kinds of tools. But it is something for many kids that actually really helps them.
I'm a daydreamer. I have to try to pay attention. But sometimes we see cool things, we have some cool assignments, sometimes we get movies. Like I know in a lot of schools, like they have like maybe once in a while we get a movie. But this happens much more often. We get videos from the internet, so it happens more often. And since I like to watch TV sometimes or go on the computer, so that kind of, I guess, maybe helps me a little.
Well, it's more entertaining and it kind of gets you engaged, and it's not like, oh, I have to learn this. It's like, oh, this looks fun, I want to learn it.
Well, when we play games, it has to do with what we're learning. Like there's a website called academicskillbuilders.com, and there's a bunch of math games that have to do with division, multiplication, etc. And she lets us play it a lot, but we're learning from it.
Well, it motivates me because I try to win, but while I'm practicing, like all the games have to do with learning, so I have to like study to like win.
So it's kind of like stealth learning. The kids are learning, but they're having fun learning it. So they don't know they're learning. But we do assess them quite rigorously at every stage of the process.
We have a standards-based curriculum. We follow the New York State standards to the letter, and that's our kind of baseline. However, we do have these other competencies that we believe are important, which include a lot of the technology stuff. And then there's also social emotional learning competencies, which include a lot of the collaboration stuff.
Now, their storyboard, who did the storyboard, Nadine?
We all did the drawings.
We all did the drawings, that's what I like to see. And who's the set designer? I have to say, great work, teamwork, and nice results. So now we're going to move on to team number 4.
If a learning system is well designed, you don't finish it without the guarantee you learned it already. Now that's true of a good game. A good game, if you finish it, you learned how to play it. It's designed in such a way that you don't get to the next level unless you're prepared to learn on that level. So you can see that we could imagine a day where learning and assessment are the same thing. That is, we build such rich learning systems, they already assess themselves. Think about it, that would be, in the end, cheap, because we wouldn't need the testing industry anymore. We would just need a learning industry.
A lot of concerns that parents have when we start talking about games is a concern around competition. And what they get worried about is, oh, there's this game stuff where kids get addicted and all they want to do is get better. And so we've tried to strike a balance with that, to say that, well, what's really awesome about that is that kids are driven to get better.
Well, addiction, we've got to be careful how we use the word addiction, because it really is a term that's used to police our culture. So a kid who stays up late reading a book is rewarded and recognized as having had a dedication. A kid who stays up late trying to beat a video game is called addicted. A kid who spends months getting ready for a school play or a football game is seen as having shown real dedication and accomplishment. A kid who spends that same time working with his guild in World of Warcraft is thought to have a problem. So I think there's a double standard here, and we're using this term addiction to refer to things we don't value, but that may in fact be deeply valuable for students and young people in their lives. Now, there are certainly experts who say that there's a limited number of people who may well be addicted to games or the internet, but relatively few. And in most cases, what we're reading as symptoms of addiction are signs of depression that we should pay attention to. You know, a kid who's depressed doesn't necessarily have a lot of emotional energy, doesn't want to get out in the world, may seem socially isolated, but we're mistaking cause for symptom when we blame the internet or the computer game on that kind of behavior.
Kids nowadays, they watch movies, they watch music video, they look at photos, you know, they look at graphic arts, you know. So what's to stop me from, you know, having a say in what my generation sees or interprets or what they like?
Film has just given me a voice like that I didn't know I had before. It just gave me a new way to express how I'm feeling and express my ideas, because I was never a really good writer.
And music, it's always been something that I wanted to do. I always wanted, like, you know, music lessons, like, Mom, can I get piano lessons over and over again? But I could never really get that.
If I can't access the place where I like to practice my passion, then where do I go? That's pretty much a dream deferred.
Digital Youth Network was started over 5 years ago, really out of trying to understand how we can support youth in learning to use digital media for all aspects of their life. We started out as just an after-school program, but we quickly developed an in-school media arts program. We've also then, in the last year, established a partnership with the Chicago Public Library to open up a high school only space called U-Media, which is a space just for 9th to 12th graders.
The thing that drew me in about DYN was studio upstairs. Spot for inspiration, really, and on top of the inspiration, it's a spot where you have the tools as well.
I go in there know that I want to shoot in this location, but I don't go in and say, okay, I know for a fact I want this angle, I know for a fact I want this angle. I just go out and have fun, and, you know, I talk to the people who I'm shooting. I mean, it's more like a hangout rather than an actual photo shoot. You know, it makes everything feel more comfortable, and my photos always come out better that way. I look forward to the outcome of each picture, you know. As I'm showing people my portfolio, I like to see their reactions because that's something I like personally.
If your learning is just about what you've learned now, I mean, how much did you master? It isn't all that useful because in 5 years from now, a lot of it will be out of date or transformed, or there'll be completely new things for you to learn. So in our world, in the 21st century, kids need to get a deep passion because learning requires a lot of practice. And it kind of doesn't matter what passion you get when you're a little kid because the passion becomes about how do you become a learner.
He spent a lot of time working and learning to do video, but he also decided to move in a different direction, and he self-taught himself how to do photography and also how to do graphic design. I mean, he's definitely gotten some instruction from us, but he sort of came back to us with the skill set in graphic design. And when asked how you learned to do it, he said, "Oh, I found all these videos on YouTube, and I've taught myself how to do it." And I think there's so many examples like him of a kid that if you put opportunities in front of him, he'll take advantage of them. But if he doesn't have those opportunities, he's going to find ways to spend his time that might not be the most advantageous for him.
This does keep me out of trouble, you know what I mean? I don't really have to, you know, go out and kick it until 4 o'clock in the morning all the time, you know, just to have a story to tell the next day. You know, I mean, sometimes I could just, you know, come home, sit, you know, look up, you know, different photographers, or I can do I can retouch some stuff myself.
Could I ask for blueberries? I'm tasting chocolate.
We did a project 2 years ago called Division 201, where over a course of 6 weeks, we created a really nice 15-minute short on just diversity in the school and how segregated people actually are inside of the classroom.
Marhaba, I'm Maritza. I'm Maritza.
I'm guessing you're Maritza. I'm Mr. Cartman, and this is Division 201.
people say, oh, you know, that digital media is killing reading and writing. Not true at all. It's changing the ecology of reading and writing. Different practices happen, different types of texts are produced, but by no means is it killing them. Kids are reading and writing more than they ever did, but they're just not doing the type of reading where you sit in your bedroom by yourself reading a novel.
Media work builds on top of traditional literacy. And if a kid hasn't had art, if they don't understand color, if they don't understand shapes and circles, then it's very hard for them to say, oh, we want to do graphic design. You can't write a movie unless you create a script first. Oftentimes, great songs have to be written down. Right, so the final product we're seeing is often the video format, but so many traditional forms of literacies go on.
Over the course of being a part of DYN, I've had to do a lot of collaborating, and I just had to learn how to, sometimes you have to take the passenger seat, not the back seat, but sometimes you do have to take the passenger seat and just go along for the ride.
Because with doing film and media, you always have to be open-minded in everything that you look at. You learn a lot about people, how to connect to them, how to reach them, how to help them, what to say, what not to say. Like it pretty much makes you this very well-rounded person, you know, and being able to fit in every pocket of society.
I think my involvement with DYN affects everything that I get accepted to, because it looks so good on my application because it's so extensive, and since I've been with them so long, it shows such a big commitment.
That sucks. Uh-oh, you just did a don't. Don't? What's a don't?
Don't gossip. I'm going to Oberlin College next year in Ohio. I'm going to major in cinema studies, mathematics, and computer science. And after all of this, I plan on opening up my own film production company with my best friend.
Well, many of us as researchers would like to connect the ability to do digital media with being more engaged citizens. And what we saw is that as kids got older, so as they got to the late part of 7th grade and 8th grade year, they started applying their skill set more so in the community. So initially you see them only applying them in the after school program, then you start seeing them taking them into their home and sharing it with their cousins, with their parents, and then you see them start doing workshops. We have kids doing workshops in schools, kids doing this work in their church.
He's walking. I'm going to try to estimate him in that same position.
The class I'm teaching is a video editing pod. It's with 6th and 7th graders.
I think you did good. Like in the beginning, you actually showed Jalen instead of him popping up in the middle of the video.
I started off as just a student, and now I actually have my own class when I used to just be a part of the class. And I don't know any teenager or a senior in high school that has a class full of students where they get to teach and create their own curriculum.
Yeah, but what about that first cut? Wasn't that clean?
That was good though.
That was perfect!
That was pretty perfect.
Teachers and schools are very well aware of the fact that a lot of learning happens outside of the classroom. We know that it's the kids who read books at home, with parents who are highly engaged in the learning, the kids who have interests that are supported in the home. These are also the kids who do well in school. We know that the learning outside of school matters tremendously for the learning in school.
Every kid has an interest. Sometimes he doesn't know what it is, sometimes he can't articulate it, but every kid has an interest. In this day and age, the responsibility of libraries, museums, schools, after-school programs, the type of institutions we work with, is to help kids identify those interests and then progress through that interest, become more advanced. It's just the same job as a tennis coach, the same job as a football coach. It's the academic coach.
We're going to find out all of your names. You guys introduce yourselves to each other. You'll be sitting at these tables together. I think the first thing we need to do is just talk about what we're doing today. And there's a challenge involved in being in this workshop.
But the whole workshop is a game. It's set up as a game. Their mission is to create a scavenger game for teenagers to play at the Smithsonian Institution. This is a cell phone text message based scavenger. You receive your clues using your cell phone.
We have to do a scavenger hunt, so we have to incorporate a mystery or it's not going to be that fun because people love mysteries and problem solving.
So we have animals. Are we all agreeing on animals? I think maybe we could be traveling the world looking for exotic food.
There are a lot of questions being raised now about cultural institutions, whether they're relevant to the future, whether they're in sync with the world as it is changing, whether they understand young people, a part of that pluralistic audience, and whether they can actually connect with these new audiences.
A lot of kids do have a conception that museums are boring. But when you put a phone in their hand and you say, look, you're the photographer, you're going to be going through the museum, you're looking for objects, something actually happens. The kids, you know, they look more closely because they're taking the pictures and it makes them more exciting.
When we talk about mobile media, what's important, I think, for place-based learning is really the idea that it is mobile. You're not tethered to a classroom, you're actually out and about. With that said, I think another thing about that is that it's also the idea that it's pervasive in the sense that you have it with you all of the time. And then it's not that all of a sudden the book closes on that, right? The student an hour later or later that night or over the weekend can continue to do some of that work using the mobile devices.
Yeah, okay, so this could be like a wave,
So,
and then
wait, so it could be you've traveled to a strange island.
Yeah, you were shipwrecked on an island.
The idea is that we give them 3 cards to examine. From those cards, they can start to decide which theme is going to work for me.
I think we should use this.
Yeah. Oh, he could be a zookeeper for the zoo. Oh, I like that. Yeah, he is.
And our project is that we lost a bunch of animals and we have to find them and give them back to a zookeeper.
Oh, it is from India.
Look at that fish, he has teeth.
The game is having them have to look closer at the objects, have to learn about the objects to communicate information in their scavenger hunts, and it allows them to be more active and to have to take a role in their own experience. And I think the museums have failed often visitors by making it too passive and only exchanging information one way. So with the scavenger hunts, I think the creative process allows them to get more involved with it because they're participating. They're creating something using kind of the raw material of the Smithsonian's collection.
We're trying to help the institutions think about how to be in the center of a kid's life rather than asking the kid to be in the center of the institution's life. It's helping them understand that when we talk about digital media, it doesn't mean you have to build a whole new infrastructure. It doesn't mean you have to digitize all your content. What it means is there are now a set of tools out there, many of which are available for free, that you can use to make your assets accessible by a whole new population, a population that isn't going to come to your institution either because they're too far away or it's not in their culture milieu. So in fact, it's convincing them that we're actually expanding your audience.
The story behind the peacocks.
Whistler, I would like you to paint a small part of the kitchen while I'm gone.
Okay, sounds great.
So in the museum environment, they're learning interpretive skills, they're learning visual literacy, how to look at objects, how to look at artifacts, how to interpret them, and also how to translate their interpretation to the people who are playing their game.
Part of the opportunity here is learning the content, which is very much the 20th century idea around education. But in 21st century, it's learning the tools and the skills of remaking that content and becoming the creator and the producer. And I think I would actually go further and say that more important even than going from consumption to production. It's going from production to participation.
What does the shape of his head remind you of? It's a moon. It's a moon.
That reminds me of that.
That's correct. Well done.
Find the key to the sun.
We're doing the whole thing, but sort of a test because we're giving each other feedback.
All of your questions were written well. The rhyming was good, but you shouldn't compromise the question to make it rhyme. So, in conclusion, your scavenger hunt needs some work.
I think in a world of constant change, there is no one expert for most of what you're going to encounter. What you have to think about is how do you move from the notion of individual expertise to collective expertise.
A long time ago, the master predicted
so we're not using your phone.
everyone listen. A long time ago.
Most of our learning could very well come from the interaction with the peers in this particular collective that I'm a part of. Because we all know that one of the best ways to learn something is to teach something. So in peer-based collaboration, you're both learning and teaching. And that sense of having to explain to others something is often the way you discover what you yourself know and don't know.
They don't need the facilitator anymore. They don't need an adult to help them because they're so excited about the project. They don't even really realize how much they're learning and how much they're gaining. The whole writing process of storytelling, writing things in a concise manner, choice of words to make the story interesting, learning interpretive skills, they're learning visual literacy.
I think a lot of what's happening with this program is that the individual student is being empowered. And they're being empowered to sort of follow a different course maybe, or to follow a very personal sort of path to understanding what the great artists have always done. When I see how they use the technology, and I see how they, with a certain amount of enthusiasm and excitement, deal with this institution and deal with the collection and the work of these artists, I think we've just started. We've just scratched the surface of what can truly be accomplished. And the end result is going to be they're going to feel more confident. They're going to be more. They're going to believe more in the creative process, and they're going to believe more in the fact that they can make a contribution to this world that is positive. And I think that's what's so important about all of this.
Humans don't learn from abstractions. They don't learn from just a bunch of words. They learn from having experiences and then learning to generalize eventually from lots of experiences, find patterns in them, and then marry them to words. So if I wanted you to have an embodied and situated learning experience of an electron or an electromagnetic field, we could make in a game where you're an electron, or you could make a game where you're a virus. So the digital media allows you to have guided, well-designed experiences better than you can do sometimes in the real world, because the real world isn't quite as malleable as digital media.
So we're doing an augmented reality game. We're walking around downtown Middleton, learning about all the old buildings that used to be here back in, I don't know, like the 1900s, around then. And you walk around to different like spots on the GPS, and then they pop up and tell you what used to be there.
We're doing a project for our school. Would you mind if we ask you a couple of questions?
Well, I think for me, place-based learning primarily comes from my own experience as a learner, particularly in my early childhood experiences of being someone who lived in a community and in a neighborhood where we did a lot of exploration of our own backyard, so to speak. From a teaching standpoint, the thing that I really found that worked well for students about local is very often it's about their own stories. So it really starts with their own experiences and their own experiences of place.
You want to learn about the history of this place? I think I can help. Yeah, I found an old map in my house a few years back. I'll share the map with you, but I need something in return. The last time I traveled back in time, I left an important photo back there. I need you to get it for me. It is hanging behind the bar at the Washington Hotel.
In augmented reality, where it's GPS based, so that when I get to a physical location and I stand at that location, I essentially am getting ability to view media clips. So it might be watching video, it might be seeing photographs, it might be getting some text of some sort. So our idea is that, let's say, instead of me talking about it for an extended period of time, we wanted students to do is actually get out in the community, walk around in these different types of neighborhoods and beginning to see them as designed places, and go from that to thinking about how might we redesign them to make them more aligned with the values and way of life that we actually want to lead.
Being in the environment, the game that we were actually playing, was really helpful in learning the history, and you can actually hold it up and compare what it looked like from 1900 to what it is now and how much has really changed. It made us look at this new style of development that is slowly coming up. The small pieces of property, which forces people to, rather than like kick a ball around in your yard, you can actually go to the park and meet new people and kick a ball with them. Or just even go walking. They had a whole bunch of trails and stuff along the way there.
And then we went into another area of town, which is a traditional downtown environment built in the 1800s and has been redesigned and has grown some. And the goal of that was to get students to begin thinking about how is it similar to the neighborhood we were just in? How is it different than the neighborhood we were just in?
We saw a lot of open buildings like that aren't really being used right now. So we were trying to check into like why that might be.
The big complaint I hear about downtown from people in general is just the parking.
Parking is a big issue, and if parking is an issue, what does that mean? That means there's a lot of business, right? If you get empty storefronts, what does it mean? Not a lot of business. Now, if you got a lot of business, are new businesses going to want to move in, or if there's a lot of emptiness, there's new businesses going to want to move in?
If there's a lot of business,
okay, so what's the story here?
Do you feel that parking is an issue here in downtown Middleton?
I don't. I don't personally feel that parking is an issue. I work down here. I'm in and out all day long. Rush hour, yeah, it may look really congested down here, but we can at least find a spot.
Okay.
So what'd you find?
Well, we're getting two different stories from people. We went up to the parking lot and took pictures. It looks a little full, but there are definitely like a lot of spaces open.
So we go to Middleton Hills. We go to downtown Middleton, and they were asked to take on identities as ethnographers yesterday, as photographers, as geographers, and they knew this morning, for example, that we're going to meet with the city planner.
Designing or redesigning downtown Middleton, it seems that you're confined to a space of the downtown area. Does that go the same for Middleton Hills?
Another good question. There aren't strict design guidelines in the downtown. The downtown has redeveloped over time. The city got involved back in the late 70s and early 80s, and the idea was, you know, let's create a neighborhood where people of all incomes, wide diversity of people can live there and try something different.
Like a lot of people don't hear about all the events that go on in Middleton. So like maybe if like stuff was advertised more, like maybe put it out like in the schools or like in like teenagers hangout, because I mean I've been to a lot of the Middleton.
A lot of people always focus on place-based learning and how is this going to help the student, how is this going to help the student. In reality, what place-based learning really does is it helps the community, right? I think it's good for people in the community to engage with young people, and it also helps the community because the work that students are doing is actually improving the community. They're asking tough questions, they're investigating real issues, and they can become the source of some of those answers as well.
We're trying to recreate some projects that we did this year so far. We're going to put it like virtually into our laptops on Google SketchUp so other students can see it, and they're going to try to recreate what we made.
The national debt has continued to increase an average of 4.2 $1 billion per day in September 20th.
We have no other backup plan. We all lose money. Where's the money?
That's what we're doing though. We're taking a risk.
Give it less slack. My focus has definitely been with film. It came out of, being bored with your standard work. I mean, I had just gone through 4 years of middle school where every single project was a paper or a presentation, and the majority of my work was just taking tests, repeating facts. So then when I was actually given something like a laptop, I was really able to take advantage of it because I really wanted to take advantage of it.
We built schools today is an industrial model. 8-period day, 45 minutes of class, go, 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 assembly line, modeled after the factories, 1920s comprehensive high schools. That's how we got where we are today. Society has evolved past that. Schools haven't yet.
The digital media and the social networking is just so ingrained in this next generation of kids that it had to be incorporated. Ignoring it is just being irresponsible as an educator because it's such a powerful tool.
In biotech this semester, the end goal is to create bacteria through transfection, which is injecting DNA from a virus into the bacteria, which then creates bacteria that will eat up plastic. Now we've learned about how to do this in theory. We're supposed to create some type of metaphor that uses something else that already exists in nature to explain the process of transfection.
And so hopefully what will come from this is a whole bunch of stories that people can tell that will explain the science, but make it so you could even talk to your 10-year-old brother, sister, niece, or whoever, and they might have a decent idea of what is going on.
We came up with our idea, and then we started a Google Doc. I started writing it over the weekend. We all pitched in, finished the script, and on Monday we were essentially ready to shoot. And scene.
Margin!
It's not broken, dear. You just have to change the filter.
Giving students the chance to be producers of content is great because when you're producing the content, you have to know it to a much deeper level than you would as just being a consumer.
By putting your ideas out there, you're getting feedback. You can instantly change it, make it better. You've seen cases where people are found out through YouTube, or there's even cases where people gain confidence through YouTube.
Everyone wants to be seen and heard. And if you feel that there's an ability that your work is going to be shared beyond just your teacher, then you're more likely to put more energy and effort, and you'll iterate more. So I think that's just the very nature of things. And I think the ways in which most technologies have been brought into the classroom and videos and things, they've come in with a natural audience.
So one of the things that we say about technology use and therefore digital media at SLA is technology needs to be ubiquitous, necessary, and invisible. It's got to be everywhere. If scarcity of the tool becomes a resource, then when you use that tool becomes such a big deal that it overwhelms things. It's got to be necessary. It's got to be part of what you do.
One of the skills that I really try to work with the students on is to choose the right presentation method for the project that they've chosen. So the learning goals are similar for everyone, the content is of their choosing, but also they need to select the right type of presentation tool for the type of project that they'd like to articulate. So what is, or how do the actions of individuals impact the historical record, and how influential can one decision be in the historical landscape? So make sure that when you're doing this, you're thinking about individuals, the systems that are changing, and then also how influential those decisions can be in time. It's a what-if history project. So all the students go back through the entire year of the historical record that we've looked over, choose a moment from American history, and alter the outcome of it. They then need to produce primary source documents that evidence this new history, and then also be able to articulate what 2010 looks like as a result of this new history. Where is the law that made it illegal? Go into Google Scholar, figure out if you can hit up a source there. You're going to have to tell me where that starts, because I don't have a working knowledge of that.
New Orleans, because that was like a main port.
Yep.
So I was thinking if Spain didn't want to sell that, so they keep it, and then like the U.S. has to move north, like up towards Canada, instead of moving out west.
Okay. Figure out exactly what breaks down so that Spain isn't motivated to sell anymore to the United States. Let's talk about a little bit of your brainstorming about how you're going to present these. Some people throw up some ideas about how you're going to present these stories, and we'll take a look at some of it online if you've got it. Yeah. Are you just photoshopping? If they're a kid who really is more verbal, a lot of them go to a podcast and will mimic a radio show that they've heard. And some kids like to do artwork all of their own, and we have some kids sketching out a cartoon kind of book pages and illustrating that themselves, and then we'll scan that in. I do as much as possible is digitize all of their artifacts, and I think that's important so they have a record of what they've done and they know that no matter what it is, it's going to be public.
More important than learning specific content is learning process, so that you can be a lifelong learner, because there's so much information out there. There's no way that you're going to be able to learn it all.
Last minute to write up your statement and get it up onto the chat. It would be very strange for me to go back to an environment where I didn't have the internet connection every day in my classroom, where I didn't have a projector shooting an image onto the wall, where I didn't have a chat room, where I didn't have a forum where the kids could post their commentaries, where they didn't have a chance to see their own words and comment on their classmates' words, as opposed to this linear process where, oh, here's the assignment, you do it, I read it, I grade it, I give it back to you. No one else benefits from that opinion unless that student has an opportunity or the gumption and the extrovertedness to share it with everybody.
And what this allows for, instead of there just being one conversation going on in the class where you have one person speaking at a time, this forces every student to have their voice heard all the time, so that we can have 32 conversations going on at once in the class and 32 ideas that are being heard all the time.
So we have a couple of messages from Congress. Congress, the Democrats here at the table feel the Republicans are stalling the very necessary process. So you don't want them to let this bill be passed? For some reason, the students that have the least level of participation in open discussions in a classroom are the rock stars in the chat. They're the ones that are constantly posting to the forums or constantly leaving messages. You have a student that never opens their mouth in class, and they'll have 136 posts.
If this bill gets passed, then you earn more money.
Big banks lost all their wealth, like they lost all their value, so they were working.
You get this live, immediate gratification of, here's my opinion, bang, it's out there, and someone's responding to it, and bang, someone responds back, and then they get into a little war of words, but most of the time they police themselves.
Number one, we have to remember that this movement is in its infancy. I mean, this is embryonic. We have to stop thinking that every time one thing goes wrong, because things will go wrong, and we have to understand that we don't have all the answers. What do we want our schools to be? What do we dream for our schools and for our children? What are the most important things that schools can teach kids? And wouldn't it be wonderful to have a national conversation around that? And at least start to figure that out. And then from there, start the process of maybe trying to reinvent what education looks like in this country. And that's what I hope for. That's what I dream about.
It's not about replacing the teacher with a piece of technology. Technology is a tool that a good teacher uses to teach. The technology is nothing more than chalk and the map, the textbook. It's a resource. But the practice of teaching changes in a world where kids are encouraged to take ownership of their own learning, to develop their own expertise, to pool knowledge with other students, to collaborate in the classroom.
The powerful thing is when we allow kids access to owning their education, and we say you have to figure out larger pieces of the puzzle than kids are usually allowed to figure out in schools, then they blow you away on a daily basis.
There are individual teachers out there who are incredibly innovative, dedicated, willing to explore things, willing to think in open-minded ways about the future of education. And those are the battles that are worth fighting for at this point.
We are either going to have two school systems, one for the rich and one for the poor. And the poor one will be a standardized, accountable system that does guarantee you and give you the basics, and it will suit you for a service job. And the privileged kids will go to another school system where they will learn all the same facts, but they'll learn to use them to solve authentic problems and eventually to innovate and produce new knowledge, and they will make out well in the global system. Or we can imagine a system where school is not just about what job you're going to have, but about making everybody able to participate in the society, to have dignity, to be able to innovate, and that we're going to see that everybody gets that form of schooling. And then we're going to have to deal with the problem that the society is too smart for some of the jobs, which I think would be a nice problem to deal with. But this is going to be a choice for America. I think that many people believe that second scenario, that is an intelligent society where everybody can produce knowledge and can collaborate with each other to make a better society, would make us much more successful in the long run in the global economy.
We know that the learning outside of school matters tremendously for the learning in school. So a lot of what we're trying to say about kids' informal learning with new media is part of an already existing set of understandings that educators have of the importance of the home environment, for the peer environment, for the community, for learning that happens in schools. The question is, how can we be more active about linking those two together? And I think this is a tremendous challenge that a lot of these experimental efforts are dealing with. I think for teachers and schools and classroom learning, there's still an incredibly important role to play, which is about giving kids access across the board to a baseline set of standards, literacies, expectations about what they need to participate in contemporary society, to be reflective, and to also take opportunity of the fact that you really have kids and adults in a shared space that's safe, that's sanctioned, that gives kids an opportunity to reflect on things in their everyday life that's not just about them being immersed in it all the time. So I think that there are incredibly important functions for schools. What we're saying by valuing informal learning is not that we should abandon formal learning, but that we should get those working together in a much more coordinated way.